If you work a full-time job, it can be hard to find time to write. Try scheduling it. You know, you schedule your dentist appointments, you schedule taking your kids to ballet lessons or whatever. You have to treat your writing time as sacred, just like those things. So put it into your schedule from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. I'm going to write. And don't let anybody take over that time. You have to respect that time for yourself and your goals as much as any other appointment that you might have. All of this can be hard, but you just have to put out the discipline to do these things. So when do you write? It's going to be different for everybody. Some people find that it's best if they wake up an hour earlier in the morning and spend that hour or half hour writing before the rest of their family is up. I personally can't do that. I'm not a morning person. I have enough trouble getting to work on time as it is, so I'm not getting up any earlier than I absolutely have to shower and get dressed. I write better at night, so sometimes that means I end up staying up later than I should and maybe sacrificing a little bit of sleep in the nighttime. But for me, that works better than sacrificing sleep in the morning. So you just have to look at, when do you function best? When are you most creative? When do you get your best ideas? Maybe it's in the afternoon. Maybe you write on your lunch break at work. I unfortunately don't really get a solid hour of a lunch break, so I don't have that luxury, but at other jobs I have, and it is fantastic. I love it. So you just look at what works best with your creativity level and your schedules. So how do you deal with distractions? That's the question a lot of people ask me. Personally, one of my biggest distractions, I'm a neat freak. If there's something to be cleaned, laundry to be done, whatever, I can't focus until it's clean. So another thing is my dog. You know, I live alone, but I have a dog, and he's really cute, and he likes to play, and he'll come up and nudge at my hand and try and push me away from the keyboard. It's hard to ignore these things sometimes. So when I just get really super distracted and whatever I do, if I can't focus, I will, again, get out of the house. I will go to Starbucks or Bread Company, and even though I'm surrounded by people and noise at the restaurant, there's nothing for me to immediately do. So I'll go to a coffee shop, put in my headphones, and I can be really, really productive in an otherwise distraction-filled day when I can't focus. So that's, just getting out of the house and the change of scenery is another great way that might work for you to be more focused and make use of the time that you have. So sometimes we have really major life events that get in the way of our writing time. It might be a major or minor illness, marriage, divorce, some kind of disaster. Dealt with most all of those. So example, let's say you get sick. Now, if it's a major illness and you're in the hospital, you're not probably going to be able to write. There's really nothing you can do about things like that. But maybe you have a cold. Yeah, you might feel pretty miserable, but chances are you can still drag yourself to the computer or your notebook. Chances are you can really still do some writing. It might not be as much as you would normally do, but if you really put your mind to it, you're still going to be able to get some writing done. And an example of illness that I saw a couple weeks ago, I saw Panic at the Disco at the pageant. Now, were you there?
I want to go so bad, but it's so loud.
Oh, yeah. So, I know this is music, not writing, but it's still the same idea. The lead singer just puts out a ton of energy, and I was so impressed. He's like doing backflips off the drum risers and stuff. Yeah. And then he says, oh, sorry, I've got a fever and the flu, so if I seem a little off tonight, I'm like, I never would have guessed that he was sick, much less had the flu. So I'm sitting here thinking, if he can do backflips while he has the flu, surely I can sit my butt in a chair and type out some words. It's just a matter of motivation and determination to just power through these things. And I'm a baby when I'm sick. I get it. It's hard. But you just have to, kind of think about, what do you really want? And are you going to sit in bed and be miserable, or are you going to go write your story? And maybe writing your story will even distract you. If you get into it enough, it might even distract you from how awful you feel. So that's one thing to maybe even make you feel better if you can get through it. Another thing I dealt with is one of these random disasters. I had a fire in an apartment that I lived in. It was the unit next to mine, but I still had smoke and water damage. We had to move, it was bad enough. I mean, they had to gut the whole building and totally redo the townhome. This happened in November. I participate in National Novel Writing Month every year. If you're not familiar, it's a worldwide thing that the goal is to write 50,000 words in 1 month, in 30 days. So it's kind of crazy. It takes up a lot of time. I'm dealing with moving and insurance and the emotional toll, because while I didn't have a loss, my neighbors, their dogs were unfortunately in there when it happened. And I'm a huge dog lover, so that really kind of affected me emotionally. It was really, really hard. But it was one of those things that even though I had so many excuses, oh, I'm dealing with this, oh, I'm stressed out, oh, I have insurance, oh, I'm moving, I needed some normalcy to help me get through that. So I still did the challenge, I still kept writing. I didn't end up writing the whole 50,000 words, I only wrote about 30. I wasn't really focused. I ended up hating the novel that I wrote at that month, so I did kind of give up towards the end. But the point was I kept trying. I didn't give up. You know, I wrote a few words until the end, but I didn't, you know, I ended up not pushing myself to do the whole 50 because it was too much. You know, sometimes things do just end up being too much for you and you have to be gentle with yourself. Another year I have had a planned move, but the way things worked out, I didn't get to pack or do anything until November. So I'm packing and I'm moving and I'm unpacking all while I'm trying to write 50,000 words. I still did it. I'd pack a few boxes, I'd write a few hundred words. I'd pack a few more boxes, write a few hundred more. I lost an entire weekend to the actual move, but I still, you know, I was unpacking, I'd write a few hundred words. You just, you know, maybe a few boxes can wait. You just look at what you're doing and, like I said, what's really important and what do you really need to get done. And that year I did manage to write the 50,000 words. I slept a lot less, too. Writers tend to live on caffeine a lot of times when they're in the midst of a novel. You just have to look at your priorities, look where you can squeeze things in. If you don't live alone, do you have people that live with you that can help you do the chores? Maybe have someone else do the dishes or the cleaning. You know, ask people to help you out if at all possible. If you're really rich, hire a housekeeper. I wish I could do that. That's my dream. When I'm rich and famous, I'm gonna have a lawn service and a housekeeper. But you know, that's not reasonable for most of us right now, unfortunately. So the point is just look at your priorities, look where you can squeeze 10 minutes in here and there, and just think what's really important to you. If it is important, you're gonna find the time. So now I'm gonna open up if anyone has questions about anything. Yes?
I know that there's software out there that kind of helps keep track of time. I think a lot of it is more towards like, as you use applications and whatnot, like it automatically tracks. But I know there's things that, like an obvious thing comes to mind is like cell phone, like stuff that would work on a cell phone, like time tracker things like that. Have you had experience with any of those?
I haven't really. I've looked at a couple. I can't remember which ones I've looked at, but for me, it was just kind of more of a mind clutter because you have to. The ones I looked at, you have to like click a button when you start a task and then click a button when you stop a task.
Right.
So it's, you know, I forgot it most of the time. Some people work really well with those. You know, for me, if I'm tracking my time, a notebook is going to look better because it's right there. You know, I can set it right by my side, so I see it and I have that physical reminder. You know, a program is going to be in the background. But those are some, you know, if it works for you personally, those are some good things that, you know, you can figure out where are you spending your time.
Cool.
Yeah.
How do you get past like bouts of occasionally, say like if you're working on a project, you just either get writer's block or you're really having trouble just trying to find where you want to progress within the story? Like what do you do to alleviate stuff like that?
So again, everyone's going to be different. What I like to do is, so I type everything because my handwriting is kind of atrocious and I've tried long writing and I can't read what I've written. But if I get writer's block, sometimes going to paper and notebook helps me. So just change the way you're writing maybe, change where you're writing, a change of scenery. So if you're writing at home, go to a coffee shop or go to a park if you have a laptop or a notebook, just somewhere different. And another thing I'll do is free writing. So I'll write it longhand, because again, that helps. If I'm just stuck, that helps me better, but you can type it too just as easily, and just write, okay, this is what my character's doing, and literally just write out, I don't know what's going to happen next, how can I get past this writer's block, and then just start writing anything that comes to mind, and it might be totally unrelated to your writing. It might be, oh, I have to go to the dentist next week, or... But if you just keep writing random stuff, eventually something useful is going to come out. So just I like free writing a lot for brainstorming.
Is there actually a structure in the way you write your books? Like, do you start with the beginning? Do you start there, or do you sometimes think of the end and begin backwards?
So what I do is I will do a loose outline before I start a book. And it's not, it doesn't go chapter by chapter. It's not super detailed, but I do a loose outline of, okay, this is where it's starting and this is what needs to happen, and here's some ideas of how things can progress. And then once I start writing, I generally write linearly. I'll start at the beginning and write all the way through to the end. I don't skip around a lot. But some people do. If you think of a scene that you know is going to happen later on, and you're just really excited about that scene, and you really want to write it, go ahead and write it, and then paste it in later on wherever it needs to be. Or writing the ending can be dangerous sometimes, because you'll get an idea of what you think the ending should be, and sometimes as you write your story, it goes in a different direction. So a lot of times people who write the ending first have that idea stuck in their head, and they're just really, really attached to that idea, and then they try and force their story to fit with that ending when it doesn't really work, and it's kind of obvious when that happens. So be careful with things like that. But some people just write all over the place. They don't always write in order. And that's fine, whatever gets the book written for you. There's a software program that I absolutely love. It's called Scrivener. It's $45. It's worth every penny. I'd probably pay $100 for it because it's so valuable. It breaks things up into chunks so you can put it into chapters, and then rather than cut and paste like you have to do in Word, Scrivener, you can just drag it. It's like digital note cards, and you can just drag them and rearrange chapters how you want them. And it makes organizing so easy, and moving things around is just fantastic. So having a good, program like that can also help to keep you a little more on track and focused.
Yeah, and this might be kind of an obvious question, but what do you look for inspiration? What do you find? Do you find that a lot of the things that inspire you get incorporated within your writing, or do you try to use it as kind of a basis and then just build off of it?
Well, for me, mostly I have ideas either from dreams or songs. I'll hear a song, and a line out of the song will just trigger something in my brain that I'm like, oh, that would be a really great idea for a story. So my first book, Divided, the idea came from a dream that I had. The second one, Ravaged, and one that I'm working on right now, Burning Darkness, came from songs. I just heard a little bit of the song, and it just turned into a full-blown story. Some people find inspiration in just things that happen around them. For characters, I like people watching, and if I'm out at a coffee shop or wherever, I'll get little quirks or characteristics of the way people act, and kind of write those into my characters sometimes. So just always look. I keep a notebook with me all the time, or smartphone works just as well. Whatever is going to be the best for you. But just always watch your surroundings and what's going on. And there's things everywhere if you're looking for it.
Do you find that having a hard set deadline kind of helps keep things going? Like I know like the NaNoWriMo thing was a good example of that, I think.
Definitely.
Okay.
So my first book, Divided, I wrote it for NaNoWriMo actually in 2008, and I really liked it, and I knew I wanted to publish it, but I edited it, and then I set it aside, and then I edited it some more, and I spent, let's see, I finally published it last year, so I spent 4 years off and on it, because I never gave myself a hard deadline. I was like, oh, I'm going to publish it someday. Someday is never going to come. I promise you. Someday never happens. May 20th, that's going to come, whether you want it to or not. So yeah, I finally set a deadline. I finally said, okay, what is going to be realistic? And I said, I am going to publish it on, March 11th or whatever the date was last year. And then I was like, and I started telling people, I put it on my website, and I started contacting book bloggers to help me promote it and stuff. And then it's like, okay, this is real, I have to do it. So yeah, having that deadline really, really works. I have a whiteboard hanging up in the wall of my office, and I have all my, and don't just have the big deadline. Have all your little steps. Like I have to have the rough draft done by the state. I have to give it to my beta readers. If you're not familiar with beta readers, there are people who do it professionally that you can pay them to review your story, to do like story consultation, or you can just send it to friends. Be sure it's someone you trust, because a lot of friends are just going to say, oh yeah, it's really good, it's really good. It's like, well, no, it's a draft. It's not, how can I make it better? So be sure it's somebody that you know and trust is going to give you some valid feedback, yet not tear you apart at the same time. Editing. If you can afford a professional editor, please do, because I caught my first novel, I didn't. And there's going to be typos, and no matter how many times you read it over. So have all your little mini deadlines written out, and look at it every day, and that's going to help to keep you on track. The one I'm working on right now, I have a deadline that I missed. And yeah, it's a personal deadline, so I self-publish. I don't have an actual published, it's not a hard deadline, but it's still things that I know I need to get done, because I'm telling people, hey, the next book's coming out May 20th, so I kind of need to do it, because people are expecting it now. So yeah, that definitely helps. Cool. Yeah.
So do you publish like hard copies, or are you doing ebooks?
I do both. I have hard copies sitting across from the registration room down there. I do have hard copies for sale. I also do ebook. I found that online sales are mostly ebook. I've sold maybe 3 or 5 copies of a paperback from online. But people I know are coming to cons like here. I've sold tons of paperbacks. So getting the face-to-face and people are like, oh, hey, look, here's this author, and I can get their autograph and really talk to you about it. It's really cool to have the paperback for things like that. And some people do. A lot of people will argue these days that, oh, don't bother with paperback, just do the ebook. Everybody has e-readers. It's not true. There are still a ton of people who prefer hard copies over an ebook.
This one, yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
So, yeah, that does add more time and formatting and things that you have to do, but I highly recommend it, because you're going to lose out on a big chunk of sales if you don't do paperback. Yeah.
She brings up an interesting point. Is it more work to, just from a logistical standpoint, is it more work to write in such a way that it can be easily converted to digital versus physical, or is it about the same?
So I mentioned Scrivener that I use.
Yeah.
Scrivener makes it really, really easy for ebooks. You just click compile, click a few settings, and it spits it out.
And it's done.
It's awesome. I use CreateSpace, which is a subsidiary of Amazon, for my paperbacks. They use a Word document. I hate Microsoft Word with an undying passion. I don't really have a choice. So it's a lot more difficult and tedious to get the formatting down for the paperback. Now, the first book took me a long time to get it. Once I figured it out, the second one was a lot faster and a lot easier to get formatted properly. But it's just, it is harder. It does, I think so. And again, there are people you can pay to do it if you have a lot of money. Yeah, I would rather do it myself and spend the money elsewhere. But, there's professionals for